5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live as Lichtman Live. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Hey,
Hey.
welcome to Lichtman Live.
Thanks. Appreciate that, man.
We have a very sophisticated and smart audience.
You say that every time.
Well, the audience keeps proving that to be true.
Good point.
And today we're going to talk about something of paramount importance, right?
You say that every week, I feel like.
You know, as I said, I thought when we started this show we'd have trouble finding something to talk about once a week. Now we're overwhelmed.
Right.
What with shows twice a week. There's just way more stuff going on than we could possibly talk about.
That's a good point. Well, let's get right into the swim of things. How about that?
That's an excellent idea.
No pun intended.
That's why you're a smart guy.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Who's smarter, me or Einstein?
It's a close call.
Thank you. The Supreme Court's conservative majority delivered President Donald Trump a pair of significant affirmations of his immigration policy, paving the way for the administration to effectively remove more than 1 million people from the U.S. and keep many others from entering in the first place. The decisions, both of which were written by conservative Justice Samuel Alito over scathing dissents from the court's 3 liberals, will have a sweeping impact on asylum claims at the U.S. border and on a program known as Temporary Protected Status, TPS, a form of humanitarian relief that allows beneficiaries to live and work in the country legally. This is pretty big news. I mean, this is massive changes to the U.S. immigration policy,
Yes,
right?
and before I get into that, I want to give the bigger picture.
Thank you for that.
On every issue,
Okay.
every serious issue on which the U.S. Supreme Court has issued an opinion, every single time, virtually, I can't think of one of significance where this didn't happen. Who have they deferred to, Sam?
Trump.
Trump. Just bowing down, bending down, doing anything Trump wants them to do. This validates a point I have been pounding home for a very long time, and mainstream commentary still doesn't get it. Conservatives, Republicans are bending to Donald Trump, not just because they're afraid of him.
Right.
For some elected officials, that may be part of it. But there's a much deeper reason at play here. They do this because they agree with him.
Right.
American conservatism, the American Republican Party. As I prove, right, in my book, Conservative at the Core is thoroughly in line with what Donald Trump represents and the decisions he makes.
Right.
That could not be clearer in these Supreme Court decisions. Are they up for re-election?
Never.
Never.
Literally
what kind
never.
of positions do they have?
Lifetime.
Lifetime positions. So they could not possibly be making these decisions because they are somehow afraid of Donald Trump. The most insulated job holders in the United States are the justices of the United States Supreme Court. They can be removed by impeachment. And since the beginning of the Republic, say 240 years or so ago, how many U.S. Supreme Court justices have been removed?
1?
None.
Oh, I don't know. I was thinking a guess at 1. At the
0.
Okay.
It is the most secure position possible.
Huh.
There could be no greater truth to the idea that the American conservative movement is totally in sync with Donald Trump.
Right.
That, yes, for some elected officials, there may be some fear involved, but that's not the main point.
Right. I agree with you. So you're saying we shouldn't be shocked by these rulings at all?
They're absolutely to be expected.
Right.
Remember, this is the court that, when faced with this turning point decision on presidential immunity, where the special prosecutor asked for expedited consideration, they knew what the issues were because the American people needed to have these trials before the election. They needed to know whether Donald Trump was guilty of these serious felonies. So did the Supreme Court act promptly to make sure the American people got the information they needed?
No.
No. They fiddled. They diddled. They delayed for about 5 months before issuing a decision. By that time, it was too late. No way the lower courts could parse through the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity in time to have a trial before the election. So they absolutely forget about giving him blanket immunity. That was bad, or near blanket immunity. That was bad enough. A horrific decision. You know, conservatives claim, oh, we believe in the strict construction of the Constitution. Right? Yes. Yeah, where in the Constitution, Sam, is there this kind of blanket or near blanket immunity for the president?
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. I remember Rush Limbaugh, may he rest his soul, saying, you know, we conservatives believe only in what's actually written in the Constitution as it was understood at the time. Liberals interpret the Constitution. Conservatives quote the Constitution. And where are the quotes of the Constitution in this immunity decision?
I'm assuming they don't exist.
They don't exist. There is no such immunity included in the Constitution. And quite if you read the Constitution, if you read the debates, particularly at the Constitutional Convention, Max Ferrand has a wonderful collection of the debates. They weren't worried about presidential immunity. They were worried about presidential corruption and presidential overreach.
Which is what we're living in now.
Exactly what we're living in now, and what the Supreme Court enabled, both by unconscionable delay. It was just a few weeks that the Supreme Court made its decision in the monumental Nixon tapes case, you know, which was a similar situation. You know, some real urgency to make the decision, even less, because there wasn't a presidential election coming up, and they acted with great speed and expediency, just the opposite of what this Supreme Court did, for no other reason than to protect Donald Trump. And it's not just on these two immigration decisions that the court has bent over for Donald Trump's position. For example, they ruled against a Rastafarian who wanted to sue prison officials for against his will cutting his dreadlocks, which violated his religious freedom. This is a court that has opened the door wide open, you know, yawning for religious freedom for Christians, but not in this case. You know, the gun control ruling fit within what Trump wanted. The ruling precluding suing companies for toxic chemicals and pesticides, very consistent with Donald Trump's protection of business and not caring about public safety or environmental regulations. Every single important decision has gone down on the Trump side 6-3. You know, it used to be the court was conservative, but it wasn't monolithic. You know, there were justices like Justice Kennedy, Justice O'Connor, Justice Souter, who would move the court more to the middle. That seems to be totally gone.
Yikes.
I remember Amy Coney Barrett coming out with a statement claiming, oh, if you look at our decisions, we're not just a bunch of political hacks. Right. Hack, hack, hack. And, you know, here is the horror. You know, Samuel Alito has written some of the worst decisions. The decision overthrowing Roe, terrible decisions on voting rights, and now an awful decision on this temporary protected status. You know, he's probably the worst justice we've had maybe since Justice Tawney back in 1857 issued the Dred Scott decision, certainly since the court issued the Plessy versus Ferguson decision in 1896. And you know, from everything he's done outside the court, that he is a diehard MAGA ideologue, and that is absolutely reflected in his decisions. And this decision is cruel. It's mean. It's going to cost people's lives for no good reason. Why? So far, most of it pertains to Haitians, to some extent to Syrians. Why did Haitians get temporary protected status, Sam?
I'm assuming issues happening in their country of origin.
Yes, horrible humanitarian crises in Haiti. Have things gotten any better that, oh, we can now send these people back safely to Haiti? They don't need to be protected anymore?
I doubt it.
Ha! 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 This is from the International Rescue Commission that tracks conditions in various countries that produce refugees. I just need to find the exact quote here.
Oh, take your time,
in my
Dad.
papers.
No rush.
No rush. I will find it. All right. The International Rescue Committee said, guess what's going on in Haiti? It is facing one of the world's, this is up to date right now. This isn't, years ago. Haiti is facing one of the world's most severe humanitarian crises. Did you hear that?
That sounds pretty clear to me.
Armed gangs now control about 90% of the country,
Yikes.
driving widespread violence, hunger, and displacement, while humanitarian funding continues to fall short.
Yikes.
And conditions, if it's possible, for millions of Haitians, they say, are likely to worsen in 2026 unless urgent action is taken. And what urgent action has this administration taken? It wants to send these people back.
Right.
To be victims of violence and murders and assaults and rapes in a situation that's as bad or worse than it was at the time that they were given temporary protected status.
Yikes.
To what end? To what end? No evidence that
racism. That's the end.
Yeah, and this was a big flashpoint in the decision.
Right. I saw Kagan said something about it, right?
Yes. Here what a reporter said.
Reporters.
Report on the decision. Justice Elena Kagan sharply disagreed about the influence of racism in a dissent joined by fellow liberal justices Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Quote, it's hard to imagine the statements being made today of any white community. The statements fairly shout in their racial undertones and overtones alike that race entered into the president's resolve to remove Haitians from the country. We've talked about his racist statements. We don't need to repeat them again. They're horrific. They're malicious. They're repeated. It is a leitmotif of Donald Trump. Remember, this is the guy, along with his vice president, who said, black immigrants are stealing your cats and dogs, your pets, and eating.
They specifically
them.
said Haitian immigrants were doing that. I don't think they
It's
just said black.
Yeah.
I think they explicitly both said Haitian
They say
immigrants.
Haitians, exactly.
But this is pretty remarkable that a Supreme Court justice is essentially calling the president of the United States racist.
Racist. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
And here's Alito's answer.
Oh God.
Oh my God. It is pathetic.
God.
Quote, political discourse by prominent public figures is increasingly couched in terms that would have scandalized the public just a short time ago. Prominent public figures? Who are we talking about? Who is the chief perpetrator by far of racism?
Right, Trump. But
It's Trump.
So he's saying that other people are the provocateurs?
He's making it passive voice.
I don't
Could be
even
anyone.
he's creating a straw man, basically?
Basically.
Okay.
Plus, he's saying, are couched in terms that would have scandalized the public a short time ago. Not today, But whatever one may think of the cited statements, again, passive voice, the cited statements, right? No specificity, no person cited. They are insufficient to show that the termination of Haiti's TPS was based on the race of the Haitian people. Is that the most pathetic argument you ever heard? Maybe not ever, but it is completely pathetic.
I can't even quite follow what he's saying. He's saying basically there's lefties out there who are calling us all racist, but they're insane.
He's not. What he's basically saying is
Okay.
today's discourse might have been scandalous some time ago,
Okay.
but no longer. It's not serious stuff,
Okay.
and therefore we can't use it to claim racism was involved here.
So it's kind of like the same thing they did with affirmative action, basically saying like, yeah, racism existed, but it no longer exists.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it.
Just dismiss it as something of the past.
Okay.
And by the way, does he actually cite any of these statements to explain them away from Trump?
I didn't see him cite a single statement.
Not a single statement. It's all couched in the passive.
I mean, honestly, I think you could argue the opposite. We're in one of the most freely racist, bigoted points in our culture. We're sort of having like a
exactly the opposite is true.
Right, a sort of reversal of the pendulum back to the horrific.
Exactly,
right.
And that should concern us.
Right,
not like Alito does, just dismiss it. Oh, it's just part of the prominent discourse. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Makes no difference. Doesn't matter that we're sending these people back to this place where their lives and safety are going to be at risk. You know, anything that Papa Trump wants, we're going to follow.
Right.
And of course, the other thing that they agreed to was to allow, just on the basis of suspicion, the denial of asylum seekers to enter the United States. Right. Fundamental contradiction of the whole point of asylum seekers, which is they should get due process.
Trump has been railing about asylum for 10 years now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, he's getting exactly what he wants from this court. The one thing I may think the court may not do, although basically you do everything else he wants, and this is really not of immediate consequence because it doesn't change anything like these rulings do. I don't think they're going to go so far as to abrogate citizenship for those born in the United States as Trump would have us do. That might be, even for the most diehard conservative, going a little bit too far, but they may muddle it. They may absolutely muddle it. And I'm very, very worried about that. I wrote a whole op-ed about this, showing how, you know, in the plain language of the 14th Amendment, in what those involved in drafting and defending it said at the moment, that except for some very unusual exceptions, like the children of diplomats or an invading army, it's crystal clear that they meant to provide citizenship to anyone born in the U.S. Can you imagine if that's abrogated? We're going to have to check the parentage of every single child born in the United States to make sure that their parents were not undocumented immigrants. Can you imagine the violations of our freedoms that would be involved there? And conservatives claim, oh, we're the party of individual liberty and limited government. Yeah, there's so much here that you should laugh about, but it's going to make you cry.
Oh.
But you got to laugh, otherwise it'd be too despairing.
Right.
I just did an interview today with NBC News.
You did?
I did.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, you were away. On sort of predictions for the 300th anniversary of the U.S. in 2076. And obviously, there's no scientific basis for predicting 50 years ahead.
Right.
But one of the things I did predict was a real populist revolt. I don't know how much longer ordinary people are going to stand for their wealth, their livelihoods being co-opted by the big corporations and the very rich. You know, we documented on this show that since 1989, just, not that long ago, 37 some odd years, some $15 trillion have been transferred from the 99% to the 1%. And it's getting worse in terms of the economic and political power of the very few. And I do believe at some point there will be a populist revolt and the rule of the elite will be overturned.
Wow, that's quite the
It's quite the prediction. I may not be around to see it happen, but you probably will.
You will be.
50 years from now?
Oh, how old will you? Well, let's not say.
Let's not get into that.
There is some good news. And are you still have more?
I'm done with this.
Okay, there is some good news. A U.S. federal court blocked Donald Trump's attempt to regulate elections via an executive order that included a documentary proof of citizenship requirement that would have necessitated that people show passports, birth certificates, or other documentations when they register to vote or change registration. So that's good, right?
That's really good, and it's crystal clear.
Right.
The Constitution leaves to the states the running of elections. Congress can make laws, absolutely, like the Voting Rights Act or the Help America Vote Act. But the president, what authority does he have over elections, Sam?
I don't think any, does he?
None.
Yeah.
Zero. And this opinion made that crystal clear. What anyone who's studied the Constitution or American history already knows. That's why Trump is so desperate to put this into law through this so-called SAVE Act. I call it the Sacrifice Act. Do you have any idea of how this would torpedo the right to vote? According to studies, some 20 million American citizens don't have documentary proof of citizenship. They don't have passports, which are expensive to get, and they don't have birth certificates, which are not so easy to get. Try to get your birth certificate. You got to pay for it. You got to go through all kinds of bureaucracy. Plus, what happens to married women whose name is different from that on their birth certificate or maybe an early passport? It would be an absolute disaster. Not to mention the fact that the databases, and I've studied this because I was an expert witness in one of the cases, are disastrously inaccurate. You try to use these databases to verify citizenship, and you're going to disenfranchise a lot of U.S. citizens. Not to mention he's going to throttle mail-in voting, which has been a very reliable and very important option for many millions of American voters. A number of states for many years with no problems have been using all mail-in voting. Washington, Oregon, even the deep red state of Utah has done so, and other states are getting on that bandwagon. And all of these restrictions, all of these ways in which you're going to throttle our voting rights are based, once again, just like the idea of a stolen 2020 election, on a big lie. The big lie, that millions of non-citizens are voting in American elections. There's lots of fraud. Study after study after study shows there's not a shred of truth for that. I hate it when mainstream commentators say, Trump claims there's a lot of fraud without evidence. That's absolutely the wrong, 100% wrong way of putting it. How should we put it, Sam?
Contrary to
all the evidence. That's the way you got to put it. And I've been screaming about this for I don't know how long, and I still see this critical mistake being made. His own Justice Department, his own cybersecurity operation, refuted decisively his claims about electoral fraud. Every elected official who runs elections or appointed official who runs elections, most of them Republicans, have refuted his claims. Numerous studies by independent organizations have refuted his claims. When Rudy Giuliani went to Georgia and made these claims, he later had to admit he lied, and as a result lost his license to practice law. So, in pursuit of a lie, Trump is trying to undermine the right to vote of perhaps as many of tens of millions of American voters. We haven't seen anything like this since the era of Jim Crow, when Southern governments used things like poll taxes and literacy tests to disenfranchise most black people and a goodly number of poor whites.
I want to show you a video, Dad. A video. You are one of maybe the best presidential historian on the face of planet Earth. J.D. Vance recently made a comment about Richard Nixon, and I don't think you've seen this yet. I want to get your.
I have not seen it.
I want to get your.
And I can't wait to imbibe the wisdom of J.D. Vance.
I want to get your raw reaction to it. I also want to say we have 500 people watching, but only 180 likes. Make sure you like the stream. It helps us a lot. This is J.D. Vance talking at the Richard Nixon Foundation. You ready?
I'm always ready.
Oh, we don't have sound here. 1 second.
I can read it.
Yeah, but the people at home might not have sound either. 1 second. Okay.
So we were talking about this a little bit backstage, but I'm actually fascinated by Nixon as a character in history. I think that his historical legacy is enjoying a bit of a renaissance, but I think deservedly so. As I joked with Robert backstage, if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. Like, the idea that it would have taken down a presidency is crazy. And by the way, if you look at the story of how the deep state took down Richard Nixon, it's not all that different from what the same groups of people, the same institutions tried to do to Donald Trump in the first Trump administration. There is a parallel. I also just, at a personal level, young senator, vice president, writes some best-selling books, is hated by the media. It kind of sounds like J.D. Vance. So I'm a little, I've always liked Richard Nixon. But okay, one other thing about Richard.
All right, I know that was a little bit quiet for the audience.
I got it.
Let me basically summarize it for the audience. I think this is from J.D. Vance, quote, I think Nixon's historical legacy is enjoying a bit of a renaissance, and deservedly so. I joke that if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. The idea that it took down a president is crazy. Dad, what's your reaction to JD?
One aspect of it I love. He compared himself to Richard Nixon.
Oh, God.
Yes. Compare yourself to one of the worst criminals that has ever occupied the Oval Office. Richard Nixon committed multiple serious crimes, not only obstruction of justice and cover-up of the Watergate break-in, but that was the tip of the iceberg of the crimes that he committed. He tried to rig elections. He accepted illegal cash campaign contributions. He had his team break in, an illegal break-in, to the office of the psychiatrist of Daniel Ellsberg to try to find dirt on Daniel Ellsberg. He had journalists and even members of his own administration being wiretapped. He weaponized the IRS. If this is what J.D. Vance thinks is a 12-hour story, then I am not surprised that he is engaged in apologizing for and covering up the very serious crimes of Donald Trump. The only way in which, as he says, Watergate might look a little bit more minor is because Donald Trump has been impeached for much more serious crimes than Richard Nixon, who resigned prior to being impeached. Let me remind you, this was a guy who once compared Donald Trump to Hitler. He thought Donald Trump was that much of a criminal and a danger to the country, and now is licking the boots of Donald Trump and invoking as his role model one of the second worst criminal ever to occupy the Oval Office.
Thanks for that reaction, Dad. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw this, but apparently this is fairly breaking news as of tonight. A cargo vessel was hit by an Iranian drone strike in the Strait of Hormuz. Did you hear about that, Dad?
I did. I thought Trump promised us the Strait of Hormuz was wide open.
Right.
It was being protected by. So let me get this straight.
Uh-oh.
When did he launch the war? Like 4 or 5 months ago?
4 or 5 months ago, yeah.
Said it'd be over in a few weeks.
Right.
In fact, after a few weeks, he said we already won. The war killed thousands of Iranians, right? Many of them civilians, including, even though they're never going to release the results of their investigation, but independent analysts say, some 150 school children on very early stages of the war. We've trashed the world's economy. We've trashed the U.S. economy. At least 13 Americans were killed. Many hundreds more were wounded. So, where we sit now, after all of this horror, are we better off?
No.
No, we're worse off. Where was the Straits before the war? It was open. There were no tolls, no obstructions. Now the Straits at least are partially closed, and we may be looking forward to a point where, as never before, Iran gets to control the Straits. Plus, apparently, they've lifted the sanctions on Iran so they can make huge profits from selling their oil, use it to build up their missiles, to support their proxies, to rebuild their industrial base. I can't think of a way we're better off, and in these 4 or 5 ways, we're worse off after this misbegotten war and all this death and destruction.
It was interesting when we posted that comparison between the GCPOA and the Trump Memorandum of Understanding. A lot of, I guess, Trump supporters and trolls were coming in and saying, you're comparing a done deal with a deal that's still in process. But like the whole point is we shouldn't even be, that's the whole point. We shouldn't even be in this process. We had a deal that is basically going to do almost the same thing already, or even worse things than we were at. So the idea that, Trump's deal is still in process, it's not a done deal, we shouldn't even be in this process in the first place, people. Am I right or am I right?
Yes, and guess what administration said the JCPOA was working to keep Iran from enriching uranium and developing?
I'm going to guess the James Monroe administration.
Yeah, of course, it was Donald Trump. His own administration said the deal was working. Trump didn't care. Didn't really care about Iran getting a nuclear weapon. That's such a subterfuge. The only thing he cared about was, this has Obama's name on it, and I'm going to destroy anything that has Obama's name on it. Came that close. Remember, even to destroying the Affordable Care Act. It wasn't for John McCain, right? In his last days, coming in with the thumbs down. And of course, way back then, a decade ago or so, Trump promised he had a better plan, right? And what have we seen of that better plan?
A war.
A war.
Yeah.
Concepts. That's the best he can come up with. Unbelievable. And there was a poll, just the latest poll, or one of the latest, had him down 30% approval. People say his base can't crack. Well, his base, I thought, was somewhere in the high 30s, close to 40. If he's really down at 30, it's a lot of data to come in. His base, to some extent, is cracking. And then on top of all this, to add insult to injury, after long negotiations, we had something extraordinary happen in Washington that we haven't seen in a long time, right?
What? No,
a
no.
bipartisan agreement on a very important housing bill. Republicans and Democrats, believe it or not, came to an agreement to enact this bill overwhelmingly. And there was going to be a big signing ceremony by Donald Trump. So both Republicans and Democrats could go back to their constituencies and say, guess what? We did something for you.
Can I ask you a question? I heard Lawrence O'Donnell saying that bill is still a done deal because even if Trump, if he doesn't do anything, it just goes back to the Senate and they have the votes to get it through. And if he vetoes it, they might even have the votes to stop his veto.
I think he's not going to veto it. He's just going to let it become law without his signature. It doesn't have to be voted on again. But what did he say about it, Sam? This one big bill, the one accomplishment on a bipartisan basis, really, of either Trump administration. What did he say about it? Not only did he torpedo the signing agreement, he called it a minor matter. A minor matter. Along with the lines, what did he say? I don't care about affordability. He could not care less about the struggles of ordinary Americans. What's his big priority? He said, they got to pass this if they want me to sign it. This, what they call the sacrifice bill. He called it a national emergency. Sam, a national emergency?
I mean, I don't take anything Trump says seriously.
I mean, this is so far, it's such far into fantasy land.
Right.
It's unbelievable, but it just shows all he cares about is rigging the election, so he doesn't have to face investigations. Couldn't care less about John and Jane Doe American. Why should he? He's a billionaire. He's gotten away with everything. He's a pseudo-populist. Better to rig the elections than actually do something for the voters.
With that, we will move on to the question portion of our show. We have over 600 people watching, but only 200 likes. Make sure you like the stream. It helps us a lot. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Turn on the notification bell so you know we're live. Share our content, our live episodes, our shorts. It helps us a lot. Remember, donators and members get priority on the question portion.
Yeah, we're way short on the donation. Remember, we don't have access to billionaires or Amazon or, Ellison's Corporation or anything like that. We stay alive because of your help, which we greatly appreciate.
And he's tapped me, folks, which means he wants his soda tonight. Hopefully he won't spill it like the last episode. If you were tuned in.
We're really focused on not spilling my soda.
Right. Our first question is from a very generous donation from our benefactor, George Politis.
Oh, one of our great friends.
They say, you can't trust the Supreme Court anymore, especially this one. Do you agree?
I agree. It's, no different than the Trump cabinet, bowing down to apparently all the important things that make a difference that Trump wants. And not even, making a gesture towards bipartisanship, towards moderation, towards moving to the center.
This is from Michelle, F3S. They say, Trump wants to attach the SAVE Act to the reconciliation bill. Do you agree?
He wants desperately to pass it. The reason he can't pass it, and I'm not sure this is the only reason, he can't meet the 60-vote threshold to overturn a filibuster. That would take 7 Democratic votes. And I'm not even sure he has every Republican vote. It has nothing to do with reconciliation, and it would be blatantly against the rules of the Senate to try to attach this to a reconciliation bill. Trump doesn't care, of course, but hopefully there are those who will be enforcing the rules.
This is from Lone Survivor. What do you think will happen with DACA? The Dreamers.
Yeah, it's the executive order that protects those who are brought here as children, have a good record, work in the country, pay taxes, aren't criminals. From what I've seen, the way they've shredded the TPS, I'm very worried about DACA.
Again, DACA has been something that Trump has been railing about for 10 years. So
yes,
they're going to try to destroy it if they can. Let's just say that.
They may well be able to.
Yikes.
And the problem is, if you send these people back to these horrific, there's no remedy to that. You're not going to get them back even if we, have a new president and a new Senate and Congress that overturns all this.
But it's not just sending them back. Like, some of them are not necessarily from quote unquote horrific places, right?
True.
Some of them are just from Mexico, right? For example,
right.
Or, I mean,
India,
yeah. Whatever. But it's like, these people are they know no other country but America.
Right.
They came here when they were like 7 months old. What, you're going to send someone
2
back?
years old, right?
Right. You're going to send a person who came here at 2 years old back to some remote village in Mexico?
Right.
Huh?
You make an important point. DACA recipients are not
Yeah.
necessarily from these
Right.
dangerous countries, but the TPS,
No, yeah, I know.
they are.
They are, yeah.
And it's not just the Haitians and the Syrians. It could affect over 1 million, 1 million. And all of this is just going to ramp up ICE, right? This gives them another excuse to ramp up ICE and have them terrorize our communities because there's now, so many more illegals we have to go after.
This is a question from Velgren 240. They say, you've said you might try to revise the Keys model, but Vladimir Kailas-Borak is no longer with us. Would you need a new partner with expertise like his?
Not necessarily, because, a lot of the mathematical analysis I kind of learned from Kailas-Borak. I always welcome assistance, but at this point I haven't found anyone. Kailas-Borak was one of a kind. It was one of our truly great minds of the 20th century.
This is from our resident Giant and Knicks fan, James Lagruta, and it's not a sports question. How could SCOTUS rule in favor of hardline immigration laws while at the same time vote to curb environmental and health protections and gun regulations? Is that logically sort of conflicting with each other, Dad? What do you think?
Sure.
Sure.
Of course. One hand you're cracking down, the other hand you're loosening everything up. But has consistency, logic had how much influence has that had on Donald Trump and his cronies? On a scale of 1 to 10?
1 to 10, probably 0.
0.
Somewhat speculation, but rumor has it Trump is having second thoughts on picking J.D. Vance as his VP and might want his resignation if Iran talks fail. Who could replace Vance if he's actually out of here?
I'd be surprised. Trump never fires people. It's very rare.
What? He just fired half the federal government.
Yeah, right.
He never fires people.
Yeah, right.
His cabinet
Ordinary people.
His
Right.
cabinet's turned over like
Yes.
so many times.
And by the way, this horrendous person, Bill Pulte, they put in DNI.
Yeah.
He is now fulfilling his sole purpose, which is not to give intelligence information, not to improve the intelligence community, but to fire people, to be, the Elon Musk of national intelligence. Just a travesty. That's his sole purpose, to be in there. Can you imagine? If I don't think Trump's going to fire him, I don't think he's going to resign, but the obvious replacement would be Marco Rubio.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not going to happen.
No.
This is from member Alex Kawa. All three Mamdani-backed congressional candidates sweeped in New York primaries when coupled with other wins in primaries leftists have been seeing this year has drawn comparisons to maybe the Tea Party movement of the 2010s. While these comparisons are not one-to-one, as the Tea Party movement was bankrolled by wealthy donors, while these candidates were grassroots donors, do you think that there is something bubbling up that could change the Democratic Party for years to come?
Absolutely. What did I say, Sam? When Mamdani first got elected many months ago?
Good. Go with it.
Yeah, stop tearing your hair and criticizing him. Learn from this. This is another example of something I've been railing about, God, for decades, not just years. The spineless Democrats who are afraid of their own shadow. It doesn't matter whether leftists or moderates wins for the Democratic primaries. There is only one thing that matters. Just like Vince Lombardi once said, winning is not the most important thing. It is the only thing. The only thing is breaking the grip of Donald Trump and his cronies on our country. Whether that takes left-wing, right-wing, moderate Democrats, makes absolutely no difference. And I've said this before. One of the great strengths of the Democratic Party is that it can accommodate all of these various views and that candidates can be themselves. So welcome it. If it creates enthusiasm, if it helps Democrats to win, it doesn't matter what their ideology is. You know, we've had Bernie Sanders in the Senate for decades. Has he imposed socialism on this country? Of course not. That's not going to happen with a handful of Democrats. Again, to quote Vince Lombardi, getting rid of the grip of Donald Trump and his cronies on our country is not the most important thing. It's the only thing. And God damn it, that's a lesson every Democrat needs to learn.
Wow, you got fired up at the
I
end
am
there.
really angry about that.
Wow. This is from member RPG Maker. Professor, I've seen you mentioning Hitler and the Treaty of Versailles in your last stream. Could you go into detail of Eckhart, Hitler's mentor, and the German Workers' Party, since that part is usually never mentioned by anyone? And the Treaty of Versailles created Hitler by meeting Eckhart and Hitler becoming a member of the German Workers' Party, and Eckhart giving up his role to Hitler, since Hitler's origin no one goes into.
Yeah, I'm not a historian of Germany. Should contact my colleague Richard Breitman, who's the world's expert on German history. But I do know how important the Treaty of Versailles was to the rise of Hitler. It wasn't the only thing. Obviously, the economic depression was of paramount importance, and underlying anti-Semitism across Europe, although Germany was not the worst example, was very important. But the Versailles Treaty was extremely important because there was no unconditional surrender as there was after World War II. The Versailles Treaty was the result of an armistice. And so the Germans can say, and Hitler said, we were never defeated, but they imposed all of these horrible conditions on us, making us pay impossible reparations, restricting our armed forces. This was a stab in the back, he said, to Germany, and we need to avenge it.
This is from member Robs. Can you walk us through how senators were elected prior to the ratification of the 17th Amendment, and was there pushback against its passage?
Prior to the 17th Amendment in the early 20th century, under the original Constitution, senators were elected by state legislatures. Remember, the framers loved the people, but they didn't love them that much. They were afraid, get this, that unscrupulous Democrats would sway them against their own interests. And so they insulated office holding from voting. The only office directly elected by the people, only federal office. You know which one that was, Sam?
Tell me.
The U.S. House. Remember, the president's elected by electors, and the Senate was elected by state legislatures. But during the progressive era, you got a tremendous push for democratization. It was during this time we got direct primary elections. We got women's suffrage, and the 17th Amendment was part of that push. Of course, there was a pushback, but it was to get an amendment through, it's got to have overwhelming support, as this did, 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress and ratification by 3/4 of the states. It was the momentum of the progressive era that pushed this through.
This is from Michael Gonzalez. Which was the most influential U.S. political family dynasty? Bush's, Kennedy's, Roosevelt's, or Adams, in your opinion? Rank them 1 through 4.
That's really hard.
1 being most influential, 4 being least. Of these, obviously. They're all influential, obviously. But
Probably Bush's.
1?
Yes. They had, of course, 2 presidents, both of whom, whatever your values are, had an important impact. Remember, it was H.W. Bush, not Ronald Reagan, who presided over the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Union, and the unification of Germany. And of course, W. Bush had a very controversial term marked by the disaster of the Iran war. I would probably say next would be the Adams, which also had two presidents, although both of them one-term presidents who were repudiated at the end of their term. Kennedy's, maybe I would even put Kennedy's above the Adams because of the influence of both John, Robert, although he obviously was assassinated before I could run for president, and Ted Kennedy, the most influential senator of the late 20th century. FDR, of course, by himself was probably more influential than all the rest of them put together, but there wasn't a huge then follow-up legacy of Roosevelt's.
Speaking of FDR, Diane Kastner says, I'm watching FDR on Netflix. It's outstanding. You would love it. Have you heard about it?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either.
Sam probably has.
No, I haven't. I didn't know
about it.
I didn't know Netflix. Is this new, or is this like an old documentary that Netflix just has, or is it a Netflix original
We
documentary?
can find out.
You're right. We can find out.
Yes, you're a smart guy.
You're a smart guy.
How much time do we have?
It is currently 9:51 p.m. Eastern Time.
So we can take
Couple more.
yeah. And you got a FIFA game coming up, right?
I think it's FIFA.
FIFA.
What's with your pronunciation
I
of
don't
things?
know.
FIFA?
FIFA could be FIFA, could be FIFA,
I guess so.
depending on whether
Robot.
how you pronounce the I.
Bezos, FIFA.
Have we figured it out whether it's Bezos or Bezos?
Yeah, we did a poll and everybody said it's Bezos.
Bezos.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess
Not that I care.
tomato, kind of.
Exactly.
Right? Let's see. Our next question is from member Sean Matthew. To what extent did Eisenhower's response to Sputnik transform American education? And how did those changes affect the nation's scientific and technological development?
How much time did you say we had?
We have about 7 hours left.
Yeah, that's about what I need. I'll give you the elevator answer. It was a profound importance because we always thought, well, the Soviets had these massive armies, much more manpower than we did. We always had the scientific and technological edge on them. Sputnik in 1957 shattered that illusion. True or false? It certainly had that effect. That led to a major tilt in our education towards science and technology, and also led to the formation of NASA, the Aeronautic and Space Agency, and of course was very instrumental in promoting a new arms race. How was that for the elevator answer?
Pretty good. Do you know who Nicki Minaj is?
She's a singer.
I think we've talked about this before, right? She's MAGA. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know
I
that.
think we've already
I don't really
talked
care.
about that. He doesn't care. Moving on. This is from Brian Sheehan. 2 questions. 1, if you're a fan of ducks, which you mentioned last episode in the Reflecting Pool episode, are you a fan of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks?
You bet. Absolutely.
You are?
Kind of. I'm not much of a hockey fan,
What to
but
say,
I love the name.
Okay, you love the name. 2, can the keys be applied to other U.S. elections besides presidential, senatorial, mayoral, House, governor, etc.?
I've tried. And the problem is those aren't single national elections. You know, there are 50 Senate, 50 gubernatorial, 50 states in which they're elected, 435 congressional seats. And I've not been able to develop a single key that answers all of those elections. Way back, I think it was in the 80s, I developed a set of keys to the Senate. And they were about 85 to 90% right. But what do you think people focused on, Sam?
The percentage you got wrong.
The percentage I got wrong.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to discredit the presidential keys, so I dropped that effort.
Gotcha. Good thinking, dropping that effort, Dad. This is from member Steal This Alias. They say, if China gets back to the moon first, will it be as impactful as Sputnik?
No, because Sputnik was a first. You know, the first man-made satellite to orbit the Earth. Getting to the moon again would not be a first.
Right. This is from Dark Pepsi. They say, Zohran Mamdani is now the kingmaker, in my view. What do you say to that?
Seems to be, at least in New York. And again, I don't care.
Oh,
I don't care.
right.
Again, the only thing we should be caring about is getting rid of the grip that Trump and his cronies have on America. Whether that takes left-wing, centrist, right-wing Democrats, doesn't make a whit of difference.
Right.
And I wish Democrats would come to understand it and stop these internal feuds and keep your eye on the real prize. Are you listening?
Are you listening? With that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for the evening. I want to give a shout out to Michael Sheffield, John, Ben Weinberg, Secular Monk, who donated 5 memberships. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Secular
that's one
Monk.
of our great supporters.
And Free Throw Guy, who just came in clutch and donated 5 memberships. Acclaim Biz, thank you very much. Wow, we really appreciate 10 gifted
new
memberships.
members. That's awesome.
That's awesome. All right, Dad. What are your final words to the people tonight?
Well, as you said, there's some good news. We don't hear that all the time. Keep your eye on the Supreme Court. Some of the biggest decisions are yet to come. They should come probably next week.
Thank you and good night.